Are things in Sacramento starting to get scary? Well, a new report reveals that if DeAaron Fox still wants to test free agency where he's been getting frustrated with the Kings front office decisions, that multiple teams could be interested in a trade, and this could be happening sooner rather than later. So we're going to be diving in and looking at this update, exploring some possible moves that the Kings could make, and if this is the right decision for DeAaron Fox. We'll get to all that and more in this episode of Swish City. I'm Bruce Velez. Without further ado, let's dive into the news. So, like I discussed in the introduction, we're going to be talking about the Sacramento Kings as we saw a recent article come out from Sam Amick, courtesy of The Athletic. And he says that sources say that De'Aaron Fox's agent, Clutch Sports founder Rich Paul, met with the Kings front office before Thursday's game to discuss the uncertain road ahead, in which they were talking about possible contract extensions and possibility of a long term deal getting done. And as we've kind of broken down and discussed, De'Aaron Fox declined the possibility of signing an extension with the Sacramento Kings, wanting to see the possibility of what this team could put in front of him and the possibilities that they could bring to him in the quest of a championship, with him being their mainly number one option, with him and Sabonis being a nice 1A, 1B combo. I would say that De'Aaron Fox is their main priority and the player that they obviously drafted that they in that fifth overall pick that they want to keep as their franchise cornerstone piece. So building around De'Aaron Fox has been this team's main issue when they sent away Tyrese Halliburton, brought in Domantas Sabonis, and recently traded Harrison Barnes away in a three-team deal to bring in DeMar DeRozan. But unfortunately for the Kings, it has been a disappointing season. So if we look, they are currently 12th in the Western Conference, a loaded Western Conference that is, but currently at 13 and 15, having a bottom 10 strength of schedule in the NBA, being 500 and under 500 and under 500 at home. There are some glaring issues with this team defensively, and there are some problems with its team's construction as well. If we want to look at the Sacramento Kings, they are strapped into money here as we want to look at obviously De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis getting paid handsomely around some $40 million. DeMar DeRozan getting a pretty handy contract as well in the 20s. And after that, players like Malik Monk, Kevin Herter, and Keegan Murray rounding out the squad with some lower tier players on the bottom end. But Sacramento has been kind of in this limbo as a, you know, team that is a smaller market. It's hard to get players to obviously sign and want to go to Sacramento. So the only way you can make moves is to realistically make trades. And the Kings have been, enamored in trades. Last year, were interested in Pascal Siakam before he got traded to the Indiana Pacers. Were interested in players like OG Anunoby, have had their names thrown around with Zach LaVine. So they have been in the name of hunting to add stars. And this year they added DeMar DeRozan, which many thought was not the perfect fit, as all three players kind of require the ball in their hands to score. None of them can really play off of each other. None of them are great that defensively as well. And the Kings have been known to be a team that can outscore you and outbludgeon you if they want to win. But if they can't do that, well, then unfortunately for the Kings, they're going to fall. And we've seen that this season with the Kings struggling from 3 point range, not compared to seasons previous where they have been pretty successful at it, where they've been able to make some deep runs. And the Kings, after 2 years ago, winning the division, winning the Pacific, getting eliminated for the first round, they had some high expectations. And with the last 2 years being not making the playoffs, falling in the play-in without Zion Williamson in that championship game to kind of get the eighth seed, and also having a struggling start to the season this year, De'Aaron Fox, the Stars the team star, is kind of analyzing what he wants to do in his decision making. Does he want to stay here long term? Does he want to make sure he stays in Sacramento in this culture? Or is there a possibility that he would like to go elsewhere? And that's where obviously Rich Paul was talking about. And as we can see from Kevin O'Connor, the Spurs are a team that could be one of those mentioned that are positioning themselves to pursue De'Aaron Fox if obviously a move was to be made. Now, this is not to say that De'Aaron Fox is requesting a trade. It's not to say that the Kings are looking to trade De'Aaron Fox, but there has been some talk behind the scenes and now recently coming up now with the trade deadline stuff that Fox's time in Sacramento could be coming closer to a close than maybe some realize. It may not be this season. It could be in the off season. It could be even next season, or if the Sacramento Kings don't get enough assets to bring a winning team for DeAaron Fox. But that's ultimately the discussion that we're going to be having today, looking at the potential teams, including the San Antonio Spurs, that could work with DeAaron Fox, and if I think Fox should make that move. So, like we said when talking about this Sacramento Kings team, they need some things for this roster if they want to compete. So, if they're unable to go with this route and kind of get those stars, if they feel like it is the time to sell, as they are at the bottom half of the Western Conference here, if they feel like they can't climb out and compete with some of these teams, or some of these teams make moves and they want to go in the other direction, a move for Fox with the San Antonio Spurs could make sense. Fox could definitely help out a team in the Spurs with Chris Paul, Stephon Castle, Victor Wembanyama, getting some of these players together, while the Kings could reap some assets of some young wings and potentially some young talent that could be effective for them on the defensive side. Now, when you look at obviously the Sacramento Kings involving the San Antonio Spurs, they're obviously going to go out and get Harrison Barnes. They don't need him. They also need some extra rebounding, some extra big man help. Necessarily, maybe not anybody on this Spurs team could be that of an asset, but players like Devin Vassell is a shot creator and scorer. Player in Keldon Johnson, who's been an effective wing for the Spurs for some years. Player in Jeremy Sohan, Malachi Branham, who's had a little bit of a decline in his shooting this year. Sohan was out with injuries, but hasn't been an effective piece for this Spurs team. These are players that, if you're the Sacramento Kings, if the Spurs are realistically really interested in a player in in De'Aaron Fox, excuse me. DeMar DeRozan already played with the Spurs, but they're really interested in a player in De'Aaron Fox. If they want to bring him to San Antonio, if they want to compete, they would be willing to give up some of those players. A package revolving around Keldon Johnson, Malachi Branham, some extra picks could be a deal or framework around the edges that could be getting it done for Sacramento to kind of take that little bit of a reset. But ultimately, is that the right move? Should Sacramento be looking at that? I necessarily do not think so. I think the Kings, in my ultimate opinion, yes, have struggled, like I mentioned, this season with De'Aaron Fox so far. They have not been one of the top teams in the West. But if you look at the Western Conference, one, we already know it's a gauntlet. Two, we know that this is not going to be the final ending of the year. Yes, the Blazers, Jazz are going to be towards the bottom. The Pelicans have dealt with injuries. I expect them to sell and be towards the bottom. But I don't expect a team like the Spurs, unless they go on a big win streak to kind of compete with some of these teams, to be able to kind of stay in this fight. And if you look at the Western Conference, it from the Nuggets to the Spurs, they are separated by one game, and that is 6 teams there. So the Kings could easily get on a nice 1 to 2 game win streak, make some moves around the edges, and can still be competing with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. The real question then comes, what are you moving if you're the Sacramento Kings? If you're trying to compete with De'Aaron Fox, if you want to make this thing work with DeRozan, who you just traded for, with Domantas Sabonis, who are your viable options to trade? And the only realistic options are Kevin Huerter, Trey Lyles, and some of your younger guards. Kevin Huerter has had some struggling seasons shooting with the Sacramento Kings this year. If you want to look at a guy in Trey Lyles, he's also had some shooting struggles with this team as well, but he's been a nice little homey fit for the bench as a nice veteran shooter. Keegan Murray is a name that also has been thrown around in trade rumors. I don't expect the Kings to move off him, but if the Kings want to make that impact move, moving off Keegan Murray might be the bullet you have to bite just in case, because who's to say that if you keep this team together, you're going to be able to extend Murray with this roster you have. You're not going to be able to. So I do think the Kings will get exploratory with some of these guys, even possibly Devin Carter, player they drafted this season, could be on the move as well if the Kings really want to make some upgrades and still be competing in the Western Conference. Like I said, if I'm the Sacramento Kings, defense is a necessity, not necessarily Herbert Jones level of effective defense, but some role players, some quality guys, a Cam Johnson, a Dorian Finney-Smith, someone of that nature to kind of come into my rotation and be that effective defender, that guy that's going to be able to take some of these teams' best wings and hold this in some of these games when our opponents, when ourselves are hitting big shots and we need a defensive stop. Those are players that the Sacramento Kings should be going to look out for. Players like Alex Caruso that the Thunder got last year to help bolster them around the edges and really give them a chance to compete. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Do you think De'Aaron Fox is going to get moved? Do you like the fit with the Spurs? Are there any other teams that you think De'Aaron Fox can link up with? Let me know down below in the comment section. Like I said, I only brought up the Spurs, but there are millions of teams that if the Kings are really realistically looking to move off De'Aaron Fox, I believe that would give him all they can to ensure that they could get De'Aaron Fox to be that star to help them out and give him that nice extension that he wants. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for the support. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out.